What happens when one of country music's biggest stars sits down for what should be a friendly morning show interview, only to find herself blindsided by questions that cross every line imaginable? Today we're diving into the explosive moment when Carrie Underwood completely lost it on live television, storming off the Today with Jenna and Friends show after what started as innocent celebrity chatter turned into something much darker. If you want to see how badly this interview went wrong, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment telling me which celebrity interview disaster shocked you the most. The morning started like any other episode of Today with Jenna and Friends. Jenna Bush Hager was settling into her hosting chair alongside her co-hosts, preparing for what the production team had promised would be a light, feel-good segment with the country superstar. Carrie Underwood was scheduled to discuss her latest album, her upcoming tour dates, and maybe share some heartwarming stories about family life. The kind of safe promotional content that morning shows thrive on. We're back with the incredible Carrie Underwood, Jenna announced with her trademark warm smile as the cameras rolled. Carrie, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. We're so excited to talk about everything you've got going on. Carrie smiled back, looking relaxed and professional in the guest chair. Thanks for having me, Jenna. I'm always happy to be here. So let's start with the new album, Jenna continued, glancing down at her notes. Your fans are absolutely loving it. Tell us about the inspiration behind some of these new songs. Well, this album really came from a place of reflection, Carrie began, her voice taking on that familiar warmth her fans adore. I've been thinking a lot about growth, about the different phases of life we all go through. Some of these songs are about looking back, some are about moving forward. That's beautiful, Jenna nodded. And speaking of moving forward, you've been through so much in the public eye over the years. The success, the challenges, the scrutiny that comes with fame. Something in Jenna's tone shifted slightly, though Carrie didn't seem to catch it at first. It's definitely been a journey, Carrie replied carefully. But I feel grateful for all of it, honestly. The good and the challenging parts. You mentioned gratitude, Jenna said, leaning forward slightly. But let's be honest, there have been some pretty difficult moments, some controversies that must have been hard to navigate. Carrie's smile faltered just a bit. Well, anyone in the public eye deals with that to some degree. Sure, but your situation was a bit different, wasn't it? Jenna pressed, her co-hosts exchanging glances off to the side. Some of the things that have been said about your personal life, your relationships, your career choices. I'm sorry, what exactly are you referring to? Carrie asked, her voice still polite, but with a slight edge creeping in. Jenna consulted her notes again, and there was something deliberate about the pause. Well, there have been persistent rumors about your marriage, about certain professional relationships that maybe crossed some lines. The studio fell silent except for the low hum of cameras. Carrie's posture straightened, and her media-trained smile became more forced. Jenna, I think there might be some confusion about what kind of interview this was supposed to be. Oh no, there's no confusion, Jenna replied smoothly. We're just having an honest conversation. Isn't that what your fans deserve? Honesty. My fans get honesty from me through my music and the way I live my life, Carrie said firmly. I don't think they need me to address gossip and rumors on morning television. But Jenna wasn't backing down. See, that's interesting because a lot of people would say that avoiding these topics is exactly the problem. That there's been a pattern of deflection. A pattern of deflection, Carrie repeated, her voice rising slightly. I'm sorry, but what exactly are you accusing me of? I'm not accusing you of anything, Jenna said with practiced innocence. I'm just asking questions that I think a lot of people have been wondering about. For instance, there were those photos from the charity event last year. Carrie's face went pale. What photos? You know the ones I'm talking about, with the married politician. Very cozy looking, very friendly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Carrie stared at Jenna for a long moment, her jaw working like she was trying to find words. Are you seriously asking me about tabloid photographs right now? I'm asking about a situation that raised a lot of questions, Jenna replied calmly. Questions about judgment, about boundaries. About judgment? Carrie's voice was getting sharper now. You want to talk about judgment? Let's talk about the judgment of ambushing a guest with gossip disguised as journalism. Jenna's co-hosts were looking increasingly uncomfortable, but she pressed on. Carrie, I understand you might be sensitive about this topic, but isn't transparency important, especially when you're such a role model for so many young women? Don't you dare, Carrie said, pointing a finger at Jenna. Don't you dare use my responsibility to my fans as an excuse to drag me through this kind of nonsense. I'm not dragging you through anything, Jenna protested. I'm giving you an opportunity to set the record straight. Set the record straight. About what? Carrie shot back. About photographs taken out of context? About rumors started by people with nothing better to do than tear down successful women. The tension was palpable now, crackling through the studio like electricity before a storm. Look, Carrie, Jenna said, trying to regain control of the narrative. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to do here. This isn't about tearing anyone down. This is about having real conversations instead of the same scripted promotional interviews everyone's tired of. Real conversations, Carrie laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think blindsiding someone with tabloid garbage qualifies as a real conversation? I think avoiding difficult topics is what's wrong with celebrity culture today, Jenna fired back, her own composure starting to crack. Everyone just wants to talk about albums and tours and pretend like the messy human stuff doesn't exist. The messy human stuff, Carrie's voice was incredulous. You mean my private life? The parts of my existence that have absolutely nothing to do with why I'm here today. One of Jenna's co-hosts, clearly sensing disaster, tried to intervene. Maybe we should talk about the tour dates. Carrie, I know our viewers would love to hear about where you're heading next, but Jenna wasn't having it. No, I think we're finally getting somewhere interesting. Carrie, help me understand something. If these rumors are so baseless, why do they keep following you around? Why do people keep talking about your marriage, your friendships with married men, your behavior at industry events? Carrie's hands gripped the arms of her chair. Because people like you keep giving oxygen to lies. Because shows like this one apparently think destroying someone's reputation is good television. Nobody's trying to destroy your reputation, Jenna insisted. But you have to admit, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. Where there's smoke, there's usually someone like you fanning the flames, Carrie shot back immediately. The studio audience, which had been uncomfortably silent, began to murmur. This was clearly not what anyone had signed up for when they came to watch a morning show taping. Okay, that's unfair, Jenna said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. I'm a journalist, Carrie. It's my job to ask the questions that matter. Your job. Carrie stood up from her chair, her microphone pack nearly pulling her back down. Your job is to ambush guests with personal attacks disguised as journalism. Your job is to repeat unverified gossip as if it's news. These aren't personal attacks, Jenna protested, but her voice lacked conviction now. These are legitimate questions about your public behavior. My public behavior? Carrie was pacing now as much as the microphone cord would allow. Taking a photo at a charity event is behavior that needs to be questioned. Having conversations with colleagues in the music industry is suspicious activity. When those colleagues are married men, and when those conversations happen in very private settings. Yes, I think people have a right to wonder, Jenna said, doubling down despite the obvious danger signs. People have a right to wonder, Carrie repeated, her voice getting louder. What people? What right? The right to speculate about someone's marriage based on tabloid photographs. Carrie, you're getting very defensive about this, Jenna observed, possibly the worst thing she could have said at that moment. Defensive? Carrie whirled around to face her fully. I'm defensive because I'm being attacked on live television by someone who's supposed to be a professional interviewer, not a gossip columnist. I resent that characterization, Jenna said stiffly. And I resent being lied to about what this interview was going to be about, Carrie fired back. I was told we were here to talk about music, about my tour, about positive things. Instead, you've turned this into some kind of interrogation. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones people don't want to have, Jenna replied, clearly trying to sound profound, but coming across as condescending instead. Important conversations? Carrie's laugh was harsh now. You think discussing made-up scandals about my personal life is important? You think repeating gossip qualifies as important journalism? I think transparency from public figures is important, Jenna said. I think accountability matters. Accountability for what? Carrie demanded. For living my life? For having a career? For existing as a woman in the public eye? For the choices you've made that have affected other people, Jenna said, and the words hung in the air like a challenge. What choices? Carrie's voice was dangerously quiet now. What people? Be specific. Jenna, if you're going to sit there and destroy someone's reputation on live television, at least have the courage to be specific about what you're accusing them of. Jenna hesitated for the first time, realizing she might have pushed too far. I'm not accusing you of anything specific. I'm just saying that when multiple sources suggest a pattern of behavior, Multiple sources? Carrie interrupted. You mean anonymous tips to gossip websites? You mean unnamed sources with axes to grind? That's your journalism standard. Look, Carrie, I understand you're upset, but this is exactly the kind of reaction that makes people think there might be something to these stories, Jenna said, making yet another critical error. My reaction? Carrie was almost shouting now. My reaction to being ambushed and slandered is what makes people suspicious? Not the fact that you're spreading unverified rumors on national television. The co-hosts were frantically trying to signal to Jenna to change course, but she seemed determined to see this through to its inevitable conclusion. I'm not spreading rumors, Jenna insisted. I'm asking questions based on credible reports. Credible reports from who? Carrie demanded. Name one credible source for any of this garbage you're throwing at me. I can't reveal my sources, Jenna said primly. Of course you can't, Carrie said with disgust. Because they don't exist. Because this isn't journalism. It's character assassination wrapped up in morning show pleasantries. Character assassination? Jenna's voice rose defensively. That's a very serious accusation. Carrie, I'm simply doing my job as a journalist to ask the hard questions that need to be asked. Hard questions. Carrie turned back toward the host, her eyes blazing. Hard questions are about policy, about social issues, about the meaning behind my music. This isn't hard journalism, Jenna. This is tabloid trash disguised as morning television. Our viewers deserve to know who they're supporting, Jenna replied, her tone becoming more aggressive. They deserve to understand the character of the people they look up to. And what exactly have I done that calls my character into question? Carrie demanded. Attending charity events? Having professional relationships in the music industry? Living my life as a public figure while trying to maintain some semblance of privacy. It's not just about the charity event, Jenna said, consulting her notes again with deliberate theatricality. There have been multiple incidents. The recording studio situation in Nashville. The late-night meetings with your producer. The way you've been spotted at various industry parties without your husband. Carrie's face went white, then flushed red. Are you keeping tabs on me? Are you seriously sitting there reciting a list of my alleged whereabouts like you're building some kind of case against me? I'm reporting on what's been reported, Jenna said. And what's been reported suggests a pattern of behavior that maybe needs addressing. A pattern of behavior? Carrie's voice cracked with disbelief. The pattern of a working woman having a career? The pattern of someone who collaborates with other professionals in her industry. The pattern of someone who seems to have very flexible boundaries when it comes to married men, Jenna said bluntly. The words hit the studio like a physical blow. Even the camera operators seemed to flinch. Carrie stared at Jenna in complete silence for what felt like an eternity. Excuse me. Carrie's voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow more terrifying than if she'd been screaming. I think you heard me, Jenna replied, though her confidence was wavering now. No, I want you to repeat that, Carrie said, taking a step closer to the host's desk. I want you to say exactly what you just implied about me on camera, so there's no confusion about what just happened here. Carrie, please sit down, one of the co-hosts pleaded. Let's all just take a breath, Anne. No. Carrie cut her off without taking her eyes off Jenna. I want to hear exactly what she's accusing me of. I want it on the record. Jenna looked around the studio, suddenly realizing she might have crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I didn't accuse you of anything specific. You absolutely did, Carrie said, her voice steady but filled with fury. You just questioned my boundaries with married men. You just implied that I'm some kind of home wrecker. So let's hear it, Jenna. Say it clearly. I think you're overreacting, Jenna said weakly. Overreacting. Carrie laughed bitterly. I'm sitting here being slandered on live television, and you think I'm overreacting. You think any reasonable person would just smile and nod while being called a marriage destroyer. Nobody called you that, Jenna protested. You did everything but say the words, Carrie snapped. And now you want to hide behind some antics. You want to pretend like you weren't trying to destroy my reputation with your little fishing expedition. This isn't a fishing expedition, Jenna insisted. These are legitimate concerns based on credible reporting. Credible reporting. Carrie's voice was getting dangerously loud again. You keep saying that phrase like it means something. Where is this credible reporting? Who are these sources? What evidence do you have for any of this garbage you're spreading? I don't have to provide evidence to ask questions, Jenna said, which was perhaps the most tone-deaf response she could have given. You don't have to provide evidence, Carrie repeated incredulously. You don't have to provide evidence before you destroy someone's reputation on national television. That's your position. I'm not destroying anyone's reputation, Jenna said defensively. I'm facilitating a conversation about accountability in celebrity culture. Accountability. Carrie was pacing again, her hands gesturing wildly. Accountability for what? For having a successful career, for being a woman who works with men in a professional capacity, for existing in public while female. For the impact your actions have on other people, Jenna said. For the example you set for young women who look up to you. The example I set? Carrie stopped pacing and stared at Jenna in amazement. You want to talk about examples? What example are you setting right now? What are you teaching young women about how to treat each other? I'm teaching them to ask tough questions, Jenna replied. You're teaching them to tear each other down based on gossip and speculation, Carrie shot back. You're teaching them that successful women should be punished for their success with invasive questioning and character assassination. That's not what this is, Jenna said, but her voice lacked conviction. Now then, what is it? Carrie demanded. Explain to me what this is, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you invited me here under false pretenses so you could ambush me with rumors and insinuations. We're having a conversation about your public image, Jenna said lamely. My public image is my music, my charitable work, and my connection with my fans, Carrie replied fiercely. My public image isn't whatever fantasy narrative you've constructed based on paparazzi photos and gossip columns. But that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Jenna said, making one final push that would prove to be her biggest mistake. You want to control the narrative. You want to decide what parts of your life are fair game for discussion and what parts are off limits. Off limits. Carrie's voice was dangerously quiet again. You think my marriage is off limits? You think my private relationships are off limits? Yes, Jenna, I absolutely think those things should be off limits. In an interview that was supposed to be about my professional work. But your professional work includes being a role model, Jenna pressed on, oblivious to the warning signs. And role models don't get to compartmentalize their lives like that. Role models don't get to have privacy? Carrie asked in disbelief. Role models don't get to have boundaries? Role models have to submit to whatever invasive questioning you decide is appropriate. Role models have to be held to a higher standard, Jenna said sanctimoniously. Higher standard. Carrie's composure finally cracked completely. You want to talk about standards? What standard are you holding yourself to right now? What journalistic standard involves ambushing guests with unsubstantiated rumors? These aren't unsubstantiated, Jenna claimed. Multiple sources have confirmed. Multiple sources have confirmed what? Carrie exploded. That I attended public events? That I work with other professionals in my industry? That I exist as a human being with a career? Multiple sources have confirmed concerning behavior patterns, Jenna said vaguely. Concerning to who? Carrie demanded. Concerning to tabloid editors looking for salacious stories? Concerning to people who can't stand seeing a successful woman living her life on her own terms? Concerning to people who care about marriage and family values, Jenna replied. And the moment she said it, everyone in the studio knew she'd gone too far. Carrie went completely still. Family values, she repeated slowly. Yes, Jenna said, apparently not realizing she'd just lit the final fuse. Family values, the importance of respecting marriage, of maintaining appropriate boundaries, of setting a good example. You want to lecture me about family values? Carrie's voice was deadly calm now. You want to sit there and question my commitment to marriage and family while you're destroying both on live television. I'm not destroying anything, Jenna protested weakly. You're sitting there spreading lies about my marriage, questioning my character, and attacking my integrity, and you want to claim you're protecting family values? Carrie was moving toward the host desk now. You're doing more damage to families right now than any tabloid photo ever could. Carrie, please, let's just calm down. One of the co-hosts tried again. No, Carrie said firmly. I'm done calming down. I'm done being polite. I'm done pretending this is acceptable. She turned back to Jenna. You want to know about my boundaries with married men? Here's a boundary for you. I don't do interviews with people who think ambushing guests with personal attacks is good television. You're overreacting to legitimate journalism, Jenna said desperately. Legitimate journalism. Carrie started pulling at her microphone pack. This isn't journalism, Jenna. This is gossip. This is tabloid sensationalism dressed up as morning show content, and I refuse to participate in it for one more second. Carrie, please don't do this. Jenna pleaded. finally realizing how badly she'd miscalculated. We can talk about the album. We can talk about the tour. Now you want to talk about the album. Carrie had freed herself from the microphone and was gathering her purse. After you've spent the last 15 minutes trying to destroy my reputation, now you want to do the interview I actually came here for. We can start over, Jenna offered desperately. Start over. Carrie turned to face her one last time. You think you can just reset after what you've done here? You think you can accuse someone of being a home wrecker and then just move on to talking about tour dates? I never used that word, Jenna said weakly. You didn't have to, Carrie replied. You said everything but the word, and then you hid behind professional journalism like a coward. The studio was in complete chaos now. Producers were frantically trying to signal to someone, anyone, to cut to commercial. The co-hosts looked like they wanted to disappear. The audience was murmuring louder. Some people pulling out phones to record what was clearly about to become internet history. Carrie, please. Jenna made one last attempt. This doesn't have to end this way. You're absolutely right, Carrie said as she headed toward the exit. This didn't have to happen at all. You chose to make it happen when you decided to ambush me with lies and gossip. You chose to make it happen when you decided that destroying someone's reputation was more important than basic human decency. I was just doing my job, Jenna called after her. Carrie stopped at the edge of the set and turned back one final time. If this is your job, Jenna, then you need a new job because this isn't journalism. This isn't entertainment. This is just cruelty dressed up as professionalism. And with that, Carrie Underwood walked off the Today with Jenna and Friends set, leaving behind a stunned studio, a humiliated host, and what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked about interview disasters in television history. The cameras kept rolling for another few seconds, capturing Jenna's shocked face and the uncomfortable silence that filled the studio. Then, mercifully, someone finally had the sense to cut to commercial. But the damage was already done. In the span of one disastrous interview, a morning show host had managed to turn what should have been a routine celebrity appearance into a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview. The question now wasn't whether this would go viral, but how quickly it would spread and how much damage it would do to everyone involved. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen a celebrity interview go this wrong? Subscribe for more shocking celebrity moments. And let me know in the comments which interview disaster you think was the worst of all.